our last podcast, we talked about your methodology and the amount of time that you had spent with Epstein, your friendship with Epstein.
Well, I wouldn't say my friendship with Epstein. I mean, I was certainly acquainted with Epstein. We had a relationship. He was not my friend like you are my friend.
Okay, well, that's a relief. But I want to come on to it because you've been at the centre of an enormous amount of criticism from traditional media, from legacy media, from people saying that you just spent too much time with him, you got too close to him. We'll come back to that later.
And again, because this is obviously extremely frustrating to hear from people who did not get the story. Now, and I've been here before. Over and over again, when I went into the White House in the first Trump administration, came out with a book that described what was going on there, I got the same thing. Was I too close? Was I this, that, the other thing? From people who did not get the story. So let's be very clear about this. The traditional media, particularly, has abdicated their responsibility on this story or decided that Epstein was too, as people said to me, ick to do this story. Again and again and again. So I'm like, Jesus Christ, please do some work. Get out of the office.
Well, ick is the right word, and I can't help thinking, what on earth is it like for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein to have to sit through this thing yet again, to listen to a president saying this is a democratic hoax?
But that's irrelevant.
Michael, it's not irrelevant for the victims to hear the president say this is a democratic hoax. That's not irrelevant. That was my point. That was my point, that you wake up every morning and listen to this stuff.
Yes, but in terms of understanding the president, pinning this on the president, holding the president accountable, this has to be discussed and should be discussed. And I suppose the victims have to relive this. That's unpleasant. Although I would think at the same time they would also say, as I am saying, finally.
So as you have frequently pointed out, Donald Trump is never silent. He is always talking. He's always talking to somebody. Since the Epstein emails have been released, he has gone uncharacteristically silent. What is going on in his head? A place we have spent so much time, and it's getting darker and darker. How is he thinking about how he rides this out? I mean, we heard Lauren Boebert being put under pressure. She was taken into the Situation Room, a congressperson taken into the Situation Room, and clearly told that they didn't want her to vote with Thomas Massie and Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ro Khanna and all the Democrats to release the Epstein files. He said it's a democratic hoax. He and the First Lady scurried away yesterday, deliberately taking no questions. What is going on in his head over this whole Epstein situation?
This has been enormously frustrating to him for a very long time. The fact that this is now all coming home to roost, I think is completely freaking him out. He doesn't. We're at a moment in time he doesn't know what to do. He's misplayed this every step of the way. I think he has no strategy. I think he has no point of view. I think he feels cornered on this right now.
You think he feels cornered?
My sense of the people in the White House is that they are kind of frantic. They don't know what is true. So remember, the people in the White House are dealing with a situation in which they understand the political perils of this. He is telling them nothing, barely knew the guy. Still on that, he's still taking that narrative.
Which is what he always does, right? Denial.
Right. And the people in the White House genuinely don't know what happened between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump from the late 80s through to the early 2000s. They don't know because that has been whitewashed out of the Donald Trump political narrative.
So, Michael, who has been set aside, do you think, at the White House to go through all these emails? Do they have a team of people going through them? Is Kash Patel going through them? Who is looking at this stuff?
I mean, theoretically, but in my experience, when you think that the government in the United States and the White House itself have unlimited resources to marshal, in reality, it's all chicken with their heads cut off. They don't know. They don't know whose responsibility it is. Also, people don't want to take the responsibility because you put yourself in the line of fire, you're going to get blamed. So I don't know if they have finally put a process in place. I suspect that they don't. I remember other crises in the White House, in Trump's White House, in which everything, rather than coming together to deal with it, everything in fact fell apart. And that the first time around that led to the Mueller investigation. So I think it's perfectly likely that nobody is doing anything.
So let me ask you something, because we've been going through them, obviously, like every other journalistic enterprise, we've been going through them. I wanted to ask you about one of them, which is sent to you from Jeffrey Epstein, at the end of January in 2019. And it's got a redacted name, which we now know because the Republicans have released her name, that it's Virginia Giuffre. And he goes, I think, Virginia Giuffre, Mar-a-Lago, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Now, I think most people have read that and assumed that he was asking Ghislaine to stop hiring girls from the spa at Mar-a-Lago. But you think he had actually a different meaning.
Well, it just occurred to me yesterday, and it actually, I was doing a podcast with Sidney Blumenthal. In the middle of the podcast, I thought, oh my God, yes, I know what was going on here. What was going on here is it was a moment in time. Ghislaine Maxwell had sued Virginia, I think her name was then Roberts, for defamation. Then Virginia Roberts Giuffre then countersued. And this had gone on for quite a number of years. And it had finally come down to both of them having to testify, to give depositions. So both of them would be under oath and being asked about what had happened there. Now, in fact, the suit was settled at that point, so there was no public testimony about this. But I would believe that is the reference. It comes at exactly the right point there. And clearly, Donald Trump would not have wanted Ghislaine Maxwell to testify about, well, anything. And again, the suit was they closed it down. They settled that suit.
Okay, so I want to ask you about another email that was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. And this email has received quite a lot of attention. It says, I want you to, this is from Epstein to Ghislaine. I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Again, name redacted, but the Republicans gave the name that it was Virginia Giuffre. So Virginia Giuffre spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there.
Just let me note that there is a famous Sherlock Holmes story called "The Dog That Didn't Bark."
Well, do you want? But what is the analogy he's making there?
Well, I think that may be that there is similar. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the greatest reader of all time, to say the least, but.
Well, he would say he was a math guy, right?
I think he's saying that was a telling thing, that at that point. At that point, there had been a lot of Virginia then Roberts had begun to accuse a variety of people. There had been a Daily Mail story in which she had come. I mean, I think that was the first story, her first expose of the experience that she had with Jeffrey Epstein. So the fact that she wasn't that. With this email was sent in 2011.
2011, and Ghislaine writes back, I have been thinking about that, which would somewhat undercut what she said to Todd Blanche when he went down to visit her in the Tallahassee jail.
I think that it is likely that Virginia Giuffre, Roberts Giuffre, would have known what was going on in Jeffrey Epstein's house during that period, and she would have seen Donald Trump there on many, many occasions.
So what about the Republicans' point that she never mentions him in her book, Nobody's Girl?
Well, I think that the interesting thing about that book, remember, Virginia Roberts Giuffre is dead.
Well, she died by suicide. I mean, a tragic life.
Yes, right. But anyway, she wasn't there. She wasn't there to it's hard to hold a dead person accountable for a book that was published after her death.
But it was written while she was alive.
Yeah, but we all know the process of books and what the changes that might have occurred. We already know that there were changes, a complicated thing. What she might have said about her husband, which she wanted to change, or her co-author
Amy Wallace
or ghost writer decided to change. I don't know. I have no idea what happened there. But there is also a publisher in this case, and a publisher. We know that everyone is afraid of Donald Trump suing. We also know that there are other people in this book who she has been very careful about. She refers to a prime minister. Many people have assumed who that prime minister is, but she doesn't say. So I don't know. I have no idea here. I'm just trying to provide a context for why Donald Trump's name might not be mentioned.